Every conversation can and will elevate you. It's where real talk meets real growth. Welcome to Level Up. Most people talk strategy. Few can translate it into delivery across teams, stakeholders, and real-world constraints, especially in complex industries like asset management and tech. Today's guest lives that gap between vision and execution. She's built her career across global financial institutions and entrepreneurial ventures, and she is also building one of the most international network for women leaders across EMEA. Meet Nora Stolz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Hakim. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. I love what you do in bringing people and different ideas together.
I thought with your signature, you always say turning complexity into clarity. When you walk into messy situation, too many stakeholders, unclear priorities, teams pulling in different direction, what's your first move?
It is such a good question. It really puts me on the spot because I'm really someone who loves clarity. I think once we have clarity, people achieve just so much more. And I remember, just as a little side anecdote, I was working in a large American financial institution at the time, and a boss of mine, a manager, was giving me some constructive feedback. And the feedback he provided me was that I was asking too many questions and I need too much clarity. And obviously, I would not be very good to work in an ambiguous environment. What he clearly forgot to mention is that he, as a manager, as a leader, was not able to tie our individual work streams to the bigger picture. And I think this was a great lesson for me. And I do ask questions. I think it is important to just figure out top down, like, what is it? You know, what are we here in this organization? What are our goals? What do we want to achieve? And just be very, very clear about it. If there are too many stakeholders involved, this can then happen that the conversation gets monopolized by one person or it goes in a different direction. There is no clarity anymore. And do think it is really important to figure that out very early on. The second thing that I would really like to share is that the manager, a good manager, will always aspire to make sure that this gap that undoubtedly exists in terms of uncertainty versus clarity, the goal should be to reduce that friction, to reduce the gap, the uncertainty, so that there is more clarity, because then people can perform mostly better. And managers who do not share information, we all have had these people, or colleagues who don't share information, they just increase the uncertainty gap. And that's a really big cultural problem, because that's where trust gets eroded. And this is why I believe it's also our own responsibility to ask questions when we're in such an situation, to figure out how can I close my own uncertainty gap, and also what can I do to help someone else and pass on relevant and strategic information.
I think not a lot of people would have this courage to ask the question. It's really interesting, close to my heart, because I always say to myself, you know, if I never ask, I never know. Thank you for bringing this up. I want to go more into your career. Was there like a specific moment in your early beginning that really shaped up your career?
I think what shaped me was I grew up in Germany, and then I was studying internationally. And I think that's the number one thing that shaped me, that I had this international lens. And for me, it was important that my first career move would be in an international environment. And the first move you do, obviously, it builds up on, because then it's a chain reaction, it's a ripple effect. And so I do think it is important to be intentional on knowing some of the key parameters early on. And then as we're going through a career, to calibrate and adjust. As we grow, as we mature, we learn what we are really good at, we learn what we are not so good at, and we learn what we don't want to learn. And so I'm a lifelong learner, but there's certain things I really don't even want to start. It's not my talent, it's not my natural interest or skill. So I do believe in doubling down on your strengths and outsourcing your weaknesses with confidence. And the more we mature, the more career moves we can make and experience we can have, the more we can calibrate this. And it brought me to the point when in 2016, I realized that I am someone who has no problem to work on a white canvas, on a blank piece of paper. And some people really struggle with it, but I really enjoyed it. And I think it was this clarity for me that I am an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur or a creator at heart, and that I love to problem solve. And it doesn't really matter whatever problem it is. You can throw me anything. I would just get really excited about it. I will go out and find out as much as I can. I will speak with the right people, and then I will, work together with people to hopefully come up with a nicer or more attractive or new solution.
That's nice to hear and inspiring. Do you have like a specific framework do you use in your work, or how do you shape up, a strategy, for example?
So for me, I love strategy, and I think everyone has a different, approach to it. For me, strategy is to really look longer term. What is it I would like to achieve? And especially, why do I want to achieve that? Ask
Mm.
yourself 5 times, why does that matter to you? And you can do that more if you're an entrepreneur. Once you're in the corporate world, you cannot ask 5 times why if you're
Yes.
too low in the food chain. But if
Yes.
you're in a leadership position, I think it's good. If you can boil it down to an essence, and it's like, this is what I really want. And once there is this clarity of what you want, that is your longer term vision,
Mm.
and like, a 5, 7, 10 year horizon, perhaps, and then to break it down. And this is how I do everything. So,
Nice.
every year, I do my annual plan. That is not that I do everything, tick everything, but it gives me a direction. And having a
Direction. Yeah.
direction just helps me that on a day when I feel a little lost, and all entrepreneurs have
Yes.
that, just like, you know what? It's okay. I dust myself up. Tomorrow, I take this plan and I'm going to continue
Yes.
on that. And it's very much clarity of vision, breaking it down into goals that matter to me, then prioritizing these goals, and then breaking them down into actual items. And I have an Excel spreadsheet that I have organized like that.
Wow, this is really insightful. Like you said some really powerful words. I relate to it. You said vision, you said goals, and setting up direction. And sometimes we get lost, especially in a if you're working in a corporate, or even if you're an entrepreneur. There's a lot of things could make you distracted from your goals. So having this vision, like you said, is absolutely important. And I do it myself. Do you have any examples? How do you set it up? Do you write it in the beginning of the year? Do you write it like personal goals, like business goals?
So I started probably 25 years ago, a long time ago, with usually I draw at the end of the year. I visualize what I would like to attract into my life. And then I draw this in a mind map, but with symbols. This is how I started a long time ago. And it just allowed me, well, I didn't have, at that time, I didn't quite have the words, but I could attract. And it was really this following the intuition and some big goals. At that time, I want to have my first own place. So I drew a key for a house and so on.
Nice.
But there was already, I felt it was really powerful, and just giving
Like a vision board.
exactly a strategy, like an intention. And then I'm a doer. So, that's not the problem. So I just started doing it. But today, what I do are that, these years, I actually develop it myself, and I make it available for women in the Female Forum. It's an annual reflection exercise where at the end of the year, we go through a PDF document that I created that asks very much, what are the things that you achieved this year? What are the things you're really proud of? What worked really well? What did you learn? What would you like to let go? And so on. And it digests the previous year. And then it gives you, in a similar vein, an opportunity to outline what you would like to bring into the new year. And I find this process helps very much to clarifying some of the goals, especially not everything is revenue generation. We are holistic human beings. And sometimes we have a year where we say like, oh my God, I just want to survive that divorce. Or, oh my God, I just want to be able to buy that house. And that is okay too. And so the way how I do this, it's always in a really holistic way. But of course, I do love my business goals.
But let's go to your career. You have navigated major global firms in finance and tech, BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and even Facebook. That's a serious mix of institutional discipline and high speed culture, in every aspect of the business. What did those environments teach you?
First of all, I absolutely adored my corporate career. I absolutely did. So I didn't become an entrepreneur because I didn't enjoy the corporate world. Absolutely not. I think I had this moment in my life where I felt like I want to create more. And within the environment I was in at that time, there was very little chance to moving into a space like that. And that led me to leave. So I can only say really, really good things. All these organizations I work for are very different in terms of corporate culture, decision making. And what I really enjoyed is during my corporate time was to figure out how these organization works, where there is collaboration, where there is more hierarchical decision making, and so on. And I think what I learned as an entrepreneur is that you need to have a situational awareness. And that is so easy to say. And in the heat of a moment, it is so, so hard to do. I think being disciplined, knowing what you stand for as an entrepreneur is so much more important because you become your brand. You cannot hide behind a nice business card. So when
Yes.
you suddenly become an entrepreneur, i.e. you work a lot for no money, you have nothing on paper, right? You have nothing. That's when you start. I remember
Yes.
it was really hard. Before I could hide, wherever I went, I said I work for BlackRock. That was a great thing. Suddenly I'm Nora Stolz and no one has heard of me. Like I was nothing. So I think there's a lot of humility that comes with it. And I do think some of the corporates, they would benefit perhaps by helping people understand that a bit of humility is actually quite
Of course.
helpful. And
Of course.
equally, some of the entrepreneurs, they come from certain companies and perhaps also it's okay to say like, we are all equal. We are starting afresh and, we should all work hard and do our best. Not sure if I
Yes,
asked another question in the right way, but
absolutely. You're absolutely right. I fully agree with you. Similar to myself as well. I'm an entrepreneur, and working for corporate was great. You learn a lot, of course, and you gain a lot of skills, and you have you can create a huge network, absolutely, no doubt. But like you said, it's a bit limited. You're making somebody else successful. You're helping someone else vision, someone else dream, and it's not yours. And this is a nice transition to the next part, which is absolutely about your vision and the female forum, the entrepreneurship in your career, and the network that you're trying to build. So I think you started in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, with a mission to create more and better career opportunities for women and a vision to amplify the potential of 10,000 female professional leaders. That is not a cute, project. It's a serious vision. It's a big vision, really important, and also sounds very strategic because you already set up a direction where you want to go. What is the problem you were seeing in the professional world that made you actually say, I want to build this?
you asked me before, what did those environments teach you about execution and founders, operators? Usually, what you learned as being, in the corporate world compared to the startup world. And I think many companies have as a company vision, think like an owner. Some of the values, think like an owner. But very few companies want you or enable you to actually execute like an
Yes.
owner in that environment.
No,
Probably
it doesn't
for
exist.
compliance reasons or so on, anyway. But I think one of the things, and it comes, along with the business card a little bit, you really have to take ownership. And you
Yes.
can train that muscle and learn taking ownership even when you're in the corporate world. It's really important to sometimes be brave and take ownership in an environment where a lot of people tend to hide. So you stand out if you take ownership and if you actually do it. Don't just claim ownership without doing it. Take ownership, deliver, be fully responsible. I think that's a really key trait. And the
Yeah.
mindset is really important. I do think it's also really important to cover your tracks, to really document things really well, and you be
Nice.
ready to explain your decision at any point in time to a senior person. That rigorous discipline helped me when I first started my startup. So I created a decision-making tracker for my team at that time where we tracked all the decisions we made and why. And we would only
That's interesting.
review these decisions when new information came to light or if one of the parameters changed. And that helped us to create a strong discipline to move forward and not to constantly think, did I make the right decision? So I think this is really, really important. So you need to have a little bit of chutzpah and just like be brave. But, it's also important, to document that, I think.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And absolutely thank you for your time and the great exchange. Absolutely inspiring. I was really happy to have you in the show. So I appreciate your time and your support. Thank you. Every conversation can and will elevate you. It's where real talk meets real growth. After